Okay, Shalom Aleichem, welcome one, welcome all, welcome to those who are joining us virtually around the world on Chabad.org, those who are here in person, those who will be watching this afterwards. These Siyum HaRambams have become a very special treat and a delight that many look forward to, and we hope that today's Siyum on Sefer Tahara gives us each an extra measure of enthusiasm to propel us forward into the next book of Nezikin. This Sefer that we conclude today is actually the longest of the 14 books of the Rambam, and it's filled with many concepts that many of us are less familiar with nowadays. So each of us were challenged to put an extra measure of yagia, of effort, and hence our simcha with the effort we put in, each of us on our own level. Today's Siyum is dedicated to Nishmas Rav Moshe Yehuda Leib ben Rabbi Yaakov Landau, the chief Rav and Chassidish Rav of Bnei Brak. Today is his yahrzeit and is dedicated by his family on the occasion of his second yahrzeit. May the newfound passion in the study of Rambam and this Siyum that this Siyum generates, may it bring an aliyah to his neshama. We also want to give a big thank you to Rabbis Yaakov Tzvi Kantor, Rabbis Yossi Lipsker, Asher Darren, Chaim Zaklis, Yisrael Lane, David Bush, and all the staff at Chabad.org. Thank you so much for all the effort that's put in, and if I missed you out, I apologize. We are going to open today with a very special guest, and we're going to welcome Rabbi Eli Silberstein, who is going to conduct the Siyum on Sefer Tahara, the 10th book of the Rambam. Rabbi Silberstein is the Menal Moises, the director of Chabad institutions in the city of Ithaca and at Cornell University. He's a well-known scholar and teacher of Torah to the masses, and I, like hundreds around the world, very much enjoy his Geschmacke Torah nuggets that he passionately shares on his WhatsApp broadcasts and podcasts. But more specifically, Rabbi Silberstein delivers a daily shir in the Rambam to the Shluchim on campus, and it's our pleasure to welcome Rabbi Eli Silberstein. Rabbi Silberstein, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Respond in these interviews. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Rabbi, you are known as a Talmud Chacham, a man who teaches Torah, who learns Torah. The Rambam is usually something that men in yeshivas spend hours elucidating and talking about one few words, and here, 3 chapters a day, 3 prakim a day, you go through it on a daily basis. Perhaps you can give us some insight, some guidance on to how you and how those who are studying the Rambam can make it through, especially after such an incredible sefer like Tahara.
Okay, so I can't speak for everyone. Everyone has their own challenges based on the context of their background, how much they learned in yeshiva, how much they didn't learn in yeshiva. So all of that figures into the challenges that you face by learning Rambam. But one thing we all commonly face, especially in Sefer Tahara, this is a road less traveled, as they have in the Goyish world, a famous slogan. And most of us, and even amongst Rabbanim, I would say, this is not very familiar. And even the Rambam and the Rishonim mattern sich sometimes with a keli, which is has a Greek name, and what exactly that keli is about. So anan manena basrei. If they're struggling, how are we going to struggle? And the chayas can be really diminished, especially in those parts of Rambam. But first, as a general note, I'm a novice to commitment. Of course, we all dabbled in Rambam. We tried to keep the Rebbe's takana, but I must say, as that I wasn't always that, committed and that responsible. Let's put it responsible. Committed, yes, but not responsible. And everybody has their pressures. Shlichus can take a huge amount of your time and energy and efforts, and to find time 3 prakim. And I, by nature, I like to learn and understand what I'm doing. If I don't understand, it's extremely difficult. So that adds to the challenge. So coming to such parts, Mada, Ava, Zmanim, of course, is much easier. But when you get to the real tough parts, you feel discouraged. So I very often entertain the possibility of going back to 1 perik a day. Hey, listen, and Shlichus, who says you have to do everything? Maybe the Rebbe meant this for Balabatim, who don't do anything valuable a whole day. They should at least do 3 prakim Rambam. But we're busy a whole day doing something meaningful. So work can be potter with 1 perik. But then I saw that the Rebbe addressed the issue And it bothered me. It bothered me that I couldn't keep up every day. And then I decided I got to do something. The news cycle came, and I know people, I don't know if you want to leave this another question, that a whole story that was circulating around with my health issue that.
We would like to, we very much would love to hear that. And that's something that the blessings associated
Okay.
with.
So I'll just mention what brought to a major change in my whole approach to this is that story that first of all, the news cycle came. Every time when a news cycle starts, everybody jumps onto the bandwagon. Okay, it's like they have a Siyum or Shas. They start a new cycle. Everybody starts brachas. When it comes to Shabbos, Erev, and Pesachim, you have like about 10% of the people that remain. Same thing with Rambam. Everybody gets excited. But I thought this. I got to change something. There's a mental block, right? That it's not possible. And I decided that since we have this yeshiva, virtual yeshiva on Zoom amongst Shluchim on campus for the last year and a half, where we learn Shiurim L'iyun and Chassidus, it's a happening place. I suggested we should do Rambam also. And we started doing Rambam, and we decided to do it the first thing in the morning. And psychologically, when you make up your mind that every day from 7 to 8, no matter what, this is the time you're going to devote to learn Rambam. And especially when you have a group, you got to answer to others that are going to show up, right? So you have to be there because others are going to be there, and you're exhausted. You went to bed 3 a.m. You're going to get up at 6:30 to be there ready for 7 o'clock. But people are, people. If I am late, people write Rambam. Where's the link, right? People are already. I can hear in my dreams. People are driving me crazy, knocking on my door. So the fact is that you have to be there. You make a set time, 7 to 8. And no matter what, this is the time you're going to devote first thing in the morning. I hate to say this, you discharge an obligation, but the commitment, the consistency of it with time eventually makes it manageable. You begin to realize that it's possible. The Rebbe asked of us things that we often think was so out of range with realism, realistic expectations. But the truth is, the Rebbe knew us, and he still demanded these things of us. So it has to be possible. Now, the miracle that you talked about, you mentioned earlier, is not the reason why I started doing it. It's the opposite. The miracle came as a result. And what happened was I had a medical issue that the doctors for the last few years, it's something that compounds when you get to a certain age. Things happen in your life. And so there was a certain thing in my heart which needed to be taken care of. It wasn't something dangerous, but it could become something of a serious nature. And then the doctors put me on monitors to check. It was like it got very, very bad in a way, like 40,000 extra beats in 24 hours, like something really exaggerated. And it fluctuated. A few months later, did another test. Finally, I said, the Rebbe says in the Sichos that learning Rambam is as gula for refuah, right? The 83 prakim halachas of the Rambam corresponds to the 83 machlas in the Gemara. Anyways, I went back to the doctor after a couple of months of doing this kviyas with shluchim, and he put me on the monitor. After 24 hours, he said to me, "So did you do the procedure?" Oh, I was supposed to go to another city right here, this small town. We don't have such equipment. So I had to go to Rochester, which is 2 hours away, to a hospital for 2 days to do a procedure. And then COVID came, so we postponed the procedure. So then I started with Rambam, and he put me on a test. He said, before we go with the procedure, let's do another test. He said, you only have one extra beat the entire 24 hours. He says, it never happened to me before, that a patient from 40,000 to 1, he says, this is not normal. He says, did you do the procedure or you didn't? He couldn't understand what went on. I told him, no, I didn't do anything. He said, we have to do another test. This is not, just something went wrong. You know, test, and it was Ithaca. He says, you're perfectly fine. So I told him, I'll tell you a secret. He's a Jewish doctor. There's a Rambam, was a famous doctor. His name was Moses Maimonides. He wrote a book, which in the book he put in a medicine that when you learn it, you get healed. You would like to study. He's a cardiologist. It says, if you and I study it, you'll never get sick. but maybe you'll give it as a recipe, as a medicine for your patients. Anyways, we can study it together. We haven't started yet, and I'm not planning on it very soon, but who knows? At any rate, this is the story that you were referring to, but I just mentioned one or two things, which, mental blocks we have about learning 3 prakim. Again, the first key that I learned is that you have a kvias in zman. He said that hour is completely devoted, and ideally, it should be the first thing in the morning, because then you did it. So you start dragging, a little later, then it gets verschlepped, and then you're falling asleep at night from a whole long day of work, and then it never gets done. It has to be done the first thing in the morning when your mind is fresh, you did it. And sometimes, now, here's the second thing, especially as you said, Tahara, you're dealing with such complicated inyanim, and if you're a person who really doesn't like to daven Rambam, you like to learn Rambam, so epis you want to understand. So there's a couple of things that are helpful. First of all, who says you have to understand everything perfectly clear? So we learned, to say one of the Gdolei Yisrael, he learned Shas every year, the entire Shas. 3 hours a day, he would learn 7 blots a day. So they asked him, so how do you manage? He started as a young man. He said, do you understand everything? What if you have a kasha? How can you learn 7 daf a day and not have any questions? It takes a lot more than 3 hours. He said, listen, the first time I learned Shas, I had like 50% of the time I had questions I couldn't answer. The next time it was only 40%. He says, after learning it 5, 6, 7 times, a lot of the questions I had the first times went away. So one of the secrets is that doing Rambam over and over again, we notice after a while, some of the stuff that seems so quaint and foreign, a lot of the time we feel like we can't understand. It's not that we don't understand it intellectually, it's just that the subject is so unfamiliar. So psychologically, we feel like there's a block between us and the subject. But as you become more familiar, you learn more about it, the familiarity itself makes it so much easier. That's number one. Number two, the famous vote of the Radatz. The Radatz, as the Rebbe brings it in the Sichas, when they brought back the Torah Mugadik, right? The Radatz was not happy, right?
Just to explain, just explain in English. When they edited the versions and they took out all the mistakes, he wasn't happy.
All the mistakes, he wasn't so happy. He said, because before, even though we had all these mistakes, so it didn't make sense because the mistakes didn't fit. So we worked very hard to try to understand the Torah with the mistakes. He said, that's a mila. Why? Because you heard of it, Ithaca didn't have the right answer, but it was a mila because you heard of it. So in other words, what the Radat said, Yegias HaTorah doesn't mean that you're Megageh in Torah and you have a clarity. Oh, I mastered it. Forget. He saw a mila dafka in the Yegiah, which you don't get a clarity. You don't know the truth. The Be'emes, this is a mistake here. The etzem meaning that a Yid took his brain and at Gehorovit of Ha'inyan in Torah, in Befrat, we learn Chassidus. We know what Chassidus says about one halach in Torah that deals with a keli called gistra. A gistra, a word in Greek, ancient Greek, which even the Rambam matters what it means. Allah has come overcome we 2,000 years later don't even know what a keli is, and the shilas about it. You got to break your head, and even after breaking your head, you still don't get a clarity. Oh, but those gehoravet of Ha'inyan, which is chachmoser etzenu shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter's chachmi rotzen is in that gistra, that halacha, that little piece of cheres, zerbrochene cheres, which was Chazalam sich gemutschet. Is it Torah? Is it not Torah? Stupid piece of clay which is totally obsolete and meaningless today. Yeah, you at that moment, as the Alter Rebbe says, the Eir in Sof is begilu, is not behest upon him kal klal, and Yid is in ganzen the mukusha tolakus. So the etzem meaning that we misyageya. So even if you go out saying, what did I come out with? I still don't have a clarity. Also, but you were connecting with Allah and Torah. So I just wanted
Thank you very much. Rabbi Silberstein, God bless you. You should have constant, consistent miracles in your life and in all our lives, and the blessing of the Rambam, that your teaching of Torah and the Rambam classes should benefit the masses from strength to strength. And now we're going to honor Rabbi Silberstein with please concluding the 10th book of the Rambam, Sefer Tahara, the longest book of the Rambam. Rabbi Silberstein, please take it away, the last halacha.
Davar bor v'goloi. The Rambam says it's a clear and obvious thing. Shatumas v'taharas gzeres hakosav hein. That all the laws pertaining to uncleanliness, ritual uncleanliness, and tahara, the purification of those forms of uncleanliness, is gzeres hakosav hein. They are a decree, they're a divine decree that have no logical underpinnings. These are not things that the mind of a person can actually can settle in understanding them. These are called statutes, laws that have no logical basis. Same thing, the tefillah, all the laws pertaining to mikveh and how one removes this uncleanliness through tefillah is also a chok, is not a logical process. It's not like as if the tumah is some physical uncleanliness that you can remove with water. That would make a logical sense. But here we're dealing with something which is metaphysical, and how going into a physical body of water suddenly removes that metaphysical uncleanliness is not logical. Really, what's part of that process of purification is the kavanah in the heart. That means the mental involvement in wanting to be cleansed. This is why the sages teach us, if somebody goes into the mikveh, is a lashon, it means kavana. You didn't have kavana for tefillah. Although this statement in the Gemara was mentioned regarding truma, not regular tefillah from tumah to tahara for chulin, because from tumah to tahara for chulin you don't need kavana, as the Rambam mentions earlier. But the Rambam still cites this Maimon Chazal to show that in generally tefillah is associated with kavana. Could be that this is the basis why the Rambam holds that leketchila you need kavana even for chulin. In all the Achronim Mutchen on this, how does the Rambam know that? Because the Rambam in the end of Hilchot.
Rabbi, I'm so sorry. We have a limited amount of time, and the class.
I'm not giving you chidush.
I apologize.
It's a very short note. But you know what? I'll just ramble it off till the end, and then and we'll catch up with time. That's what the Chachamim say. Oh, did I? Yeah. There's a remes in it. It's just like somebody is mechaven in his heart to become pure. As soon as he's tired, even though nothing changed in him, he's the same person, same physical person. Nevertheless, because he thought he had kavana, he wants to be in the Torah, there's a real change happening in him. Same thing we can learn from that in generally in life, when a person wants to purify himself from the spiritual uncleanlinesses that we accumulate through life, through evil thoughts and bad ideas and attitudes. So these are things that affect our souls. How do we purify and purge this uncleanliness from our system? As soon as a person resolves and makes a commitment that he will no longer go back to those schemes, into those ideas, and he immerses himself in the waters of wisdom. That means Torah, he becomes pure. It says in the Navi, God says, I will sprinkle upon you my in pure waters, you'll be purified. From all your uncleanliness and all your wrongdoings. I will purify you. Hashem barach v'varam mikol chet v'oven v'ashi tareinu. Amen.
Mazel tov. Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Silberstein. God bless you. I know Rabbi Silberstein told me he's going from one class to another class, and he squeezed in this.
Wait a second. Don't you have to finish that?
Yes.
And Hilchos of Shmoyna, but that you can do yourself.
Thank you very, very much. And
thank you very much.
Very nice. And so that we don't get a hubris feeling of actually completing something, we immediately want to begin the next book. And we are now privileged and honored to have one of the world experts on mikveh. He is a Shliach of the Rebbe to the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And I don't even know where he's coming to us live from, because traveling around the world, building mikvehs, creating mikvehs, a consultant, an engineer par excellence. It is now our pleasure to welcome, to begin and to open book number 11, the Sefer Nezikin, Rabbi Grossbaum. Please look, we put on the screen the very first halacha, and Rabbi Grossbaum is going to please teach us the very first halacha in the laws of Nezikin.
Halacha Aleph. Kol nefesh chaya shebirshusei shel adam, any animal, a living thing actually, because it includes birds and chickens and so on, that she's
I think we're losing a connection. Rabbi, are you there?
Owner of that animal that has this domesticated animal.
Hello, Rabbi, are you there? I think we lost you.
The Pasuk tells us.
Okay, now you're back.
It tells us that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the road in a Chabad house in Los Angeles. So what I got is what I got. So the Pasuk calls this the animal that's the property of an individual. And it really talks about, the Pasuk talking about the shore of the ox, but whether it's ox or any other animal or fowl, it's all, if it's his property, he's responsible to pay the damages. The Pasuk is talking about, mentions ox because that's the more likely to be causing damages of other people.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. So Rabbi Grossbaum, you were set out as a Shliach in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and you have now, fast forward a number of decades later, become the world expert and consultant on mikveh. How did that journey begin? Can you give us a little bit of how this all started for you?
I'd like to think that I was drafted for it, because Ashgacha Pratis is what did the connection. A Yid by name of Rabbi Yisrael Haber, who currently is a Shliach of the Rebbe in Chispin, in northern Eretz Yisrael, was stopped by in Twin Cities and told us that he was on his way to Alaska to become chaplain at the Elmendorf Air Force Base, and he made arrangements to have a mikveh shipped to him from New York. When I for him, his question to me was, if you disqualify it, I'm up. So I said, Tim, I just finished at that time building a mikveh at our Chabad house in St. Paul. I thought to myself, this sounds interesting. 2 weeks in Alaska on Uncle Sam's nickel. I'll build you a mikveh, and the rest is history. This was the Elul time that Purim, I was already in Alaska, nailing 2x4s and plywood, and we poured a mikveh, and Baruch Hashem, it was there for many years. And even as it was a mikveh that was initially just for his family, shortly thereafter, it was being used by 8, 10, 12 people. It became much wider use very shortly after it was constructed.
And what year was this?
This was in 73, if I'm not mistaken.
So 73. Now we forward some decades later, 50 years later or so, and you're at the cutting edge. Tell us, I've been hearing that there's new openings of Jewish communities in the Arab world. Are you involved in any of the new buildings of communities and mikvahs in Arab countries, and how is that happening, and how is that going?
We had the schus to be asked to come and help build the mikveh in Dubai, which is right now under construction. In fact, I was just looking at some pictures from its construction a couple hours ago. Astounding that all the workers there, who are just regular local folk, people that we often associate with people who are going to be challenging us, are assisting to build the mikveh for Dubai. It's going to be a beautiful mikveh, but this is the Rebbe's impact on the world, that there's no corner of the world that hasn't called me or hasn't come and responded to the Rebbe's call in their corner of the world to make, what is Chabad houses, they build Chabad houses, they build mikvahs.
And where are you getting the water from Dubai? How do you get the water?
Dubai is a good question you're asking, because Dubai, it rains very rarely. once every few years you get an hour of rain. And we're not going to wait several years until we can collect and make shomim for this mikveh. So the Rebbe they're involved with there, they went and the made arrangements that snow was harvested in Siberia, and harvested in a kosher way, placed in a freezer container. It took several weeks until that freezer container made it down to Dubai. Now it's over there in storage and freezing, waiting for the mikveh to be finished. And you do what you got to do. If it means that you want to build a mikveh in Dubai, you want to bring somebody from St. Paul to help its construction, you want to bring make shomim from kosher water from Siberia, you do what you got to do.
So we have a rabbi in Minnesota, the ice from Siberia, traveling together to Dubai. So this is certainly beyond the scope to be able to go into the technicalities. We've all just finishing learning the laws of mikveh, and all of us are familiar with the fact that the Rabbi Rashab instituted a specific way that the mikveh is constructed, and that the mikveh, the rainwater, is underneath the immersion pool. And there's a lot been written and controversy, and I'm sure you've been involved with much of that as well. But is there perhaps one nugget, one idea, we've all just come from mikveh, that you can perhaps share with us in the few moments literally remaining here to give us some insight into the Rebbe Rashab's creation of his mikveh?
What we're dealing with, of course, is that the mikveh that the Pasuk talks about is a spring-fed pool or a gathered water pool. When we're in the middle of a city or in Dubai, we're not going to be able to have a spring-fed pool that we can depend on because we're not near any springs. You might have to dig down. If you do some research, you'll see that in Carlsberg in Germany, they dug down, I think, 6 flights of stairs, literally, till they found a spring. And over there, they made the mikveh. To go use the mikveh, to go down 6 flights of stairs. After you use the mikveh, went back up 6 flights of stairs, and they put in some resting places on the way up because it was such a effort. The one thing that the Chachamim came to was when we have this problem, when we collect kosher water and not every day be able to change fresh kosher water, or every second day, how do we deal with this? He pointed out that when you take mayim shuvim, water that's not kosher for mikveh, and bring it into the environment of a critical mass of make shumim, the critical mass being 40 some, as we just finished learning, that mayim shuvim becomes qualified. The Chachamim over the years, the last 120 years, we're trying to deal with the question of what's the best way of qualifying it. There's a shaka that we've learned about, where the bur has a connection to the side, the bur zriya, where the water, city water comes in, and shuvim water comes into the bur, flows out to the mikveh. The Rebbe Rashab decided that there's a much stronger way of dealing with this, in where we put the make shumim under the mikveh, and we connect it with a opening that's a amma or a little bit bigger, so that person can fit through it. And then in the cover and elsewhere, there's a connection hole of a tefach al tefach. And this is something that we've learned in Rambam itself, that the tefach al tefach gives us an ability to be mevatel and mafsik. When you have tuma in 2 batim, 2 houses next to each other, and we're worried about tumas oil, as we've learned. So then, if there's a wall between them, they don't become tummy. If that wall has a window in it, a break in it, that is a tefach al tefach, then the tuma is as if it was in your own space that you are. In other words, that the tefach al tefach window simply dismissed the division. And this perhaps was the Rebbe's cheshbon, that was putting a tefach al tefach connection between the bur below and the bur above. You have a diminished interchange of waters, but yet you have a state where the upper water and the lower water have become united. Add one more quick thought. I know we're quick seconds, and that is the opening being Amman Amman. Again, we've learned in the halachas of Erev Chatzedes that we have 2 Chatzedes. That one have an Erev Chatzedes. Each one can make an Erev for himself, but they have to be for themselves if there's a wall dividing these 2 Chatzedes. If in that wall there's a door that a person can climb through, then the two chasers can make one area of chasers, they're all counted as one area. So in addition to the waters becoming one through the tefach al tefach, the fact that we have a doorway to the lower bar that is an amar amar, perhaps that's also part of the Rebbe's cheshbon. That's why in the Rishim of Rabbi Lenda, Rabbi Yankov Lenda, he said that the Rebbe told me it should be kemidas adam. What's the kemidas adam? A measure of a person. Why was that added to the instruction? Because that was perhaps what the Rebbe was looking for, is let me go and make the two areas, the two spaces, into one space, as in making Erev Chaseros.
So what I hear you're saying is that the fact that there's a larger opening there actually makes the two mikvahs become one entity in and of itself.
The two spaces become one. With the Tefach HaTefach, the two waters became one. And with the Amal Amma, the two spaces became one.
Very nice. Lastly, Rabbi, we can't let you go. We have on watching here from around the world, whether it's shluchim, members of Chabad communities, all around the world. And some of us are not able to get to a mikvah on a daily basis. We don't live in communities that allow men to immerse in a mikvah on a daily basis. And Rabbi Grossbaum is very well known for being able to have a cheap, efficient, easy to do way where any human being, anybody, anywhere in the world can build their own mikvah. In 45 seconds or less, can you right now tell us how everyone in the world can right now build a mikvah and to be able to immerse in the mikvah every single day?
Two ways that are quick and reasonably priced, or even less. One would be to have on a concrete floor or a corner of your basement, put in a
In California, we don't have basements, we have garages, sorry.
Yeah, or in the garage, a concrete block container that might be 4 blocks high, 4 feet, 4.5 feet wide by 7 feet, 6.5 feet long. If you bring the water in, city water, which we had now in mikveh with Nimshach al-Gabi Karka, you actually have quite a good mikveh. An alternative, less galdic, would be to take any kind of a pool that you can buy, cut a 4-inch diameter hole into it, so you mevatel materials keli, attach it to the soil, to earth, and if you wish, you can connect with me and I'll send you a little sketch of how you can do that in a way that patches that hole as well. And now it is mechubal lekarka, and when you fill it with water, you already have a base tefillah. If you create a hamshacha next to it, so you upgrade it. In both these cases, certainly in the first, if you fill it with rainwater and then filter with, whether it might be a megalim filter, which is pretty expensive, or even a regular filter that has to be installed in a way that doesn't disqualify the water, you actually have a very kosher mikveh that when you bring it up, you'll be able to do to be table kalim and so on.
Very, very nice. So, and no, everybody on the call, everybody will be consulting Rabbi Grossbaum, having their own personal mikvahs in their house. That might be are you allowed to have a personal mikvah in your house, Rabbi?
There's a Rabbi Gershon that said that we should not have a merchatz in our home. Our home that we're talking about, I think we have already a merchatz in the way we have at least one shower, often more than that. Certainly, if you invite a neighbor to use your mikveh, it's no longer a private mikveh, it's no longer a private merchatz, and the common practice today is it's not a problem. Thank
you very much, Rabbi Grossbaum. God should bless you, and you should be able to continue to grow. Yeah, it is.
Sorry about that.
May Hashem bless you to be able to grow and to build and to grow the mitzvah of mikveh, and to allow people to immerse and bring more Torah to the world. To ultimately, we have the Me'adas HaTor. Thank you very much, Rabbi Grossbaum. Now we conclude today's Siyum with a quiz on Sefer Tahara. Get your thinking caps on to remind ourselves. We'd like to now ask the moderator to please put up a quiz for Sefer Tahara, and we're going to go through it. And I believe we're going to even have soon announced the winners for the last few quizzes that have yet to be publicly announced. So if we could please have the quiz up, thank you so much. Okay, how many mitzvahs are in Sefer Tahara? Which halachas in this Sefer have absolutely no mitzvahs? Which set of halachas have no mitzvahs in them? Where is Mashiach mentioned in this Sefer? Who can remember what a Kever Tahoim, Tumas Tahoim, what is that? Question 5, where is there a hint to Chinuch al Taras HaKodesh in Sefer Tahara? Where do we mention raising children in purity and holiness? without any outside influences. Where is that referenced in the book of Tahara? Number 6, which of these halachas is not one of the set in Sefer Tahara? Number 7, which of the following halachas are touched upon in Sefer Tahara? Number 8, which of the following mitzvahs was not discussed by the Rebbe in his sichas on Sefer Tahara? Yeah, I guess you'd have to know every single sicha to know the answer to that question. Question 9, how many times in Sefer Tahara do we find what seems to be a tefillah, but the Rebbe explains it as a halacha? And lastly, regarding which halacha in Sefer Tahara did the Rebbe mention the word of the Rambam, that every Yid is an eretz chayfetz. Every Jew has a hidden piece of the divine within him. Take a moment, we'll take this quiz off, and then we will read through the answers together. Okay, can we take off the quiz? Are people still doing it? Moderator, can we take off the quiz and go through the answers? Okay, are we ready to take down the quiz? 30 seconds left. Okay, and the answers are, we ready? The answers are, there are 20 mitzvahs in this book. There are no mitzvahs in the laws of Kalim. Kalim have no mitzvahs in them. Mashiach is mentioned with Para Aduma, where the 10th Para Aduma will come with Mashiach. A Kever Tahaim is an unknown grave somewhere deep down in the earth. There was some grave that was unknown until that point. Where is there a hint to Chinuch al Taras HaKodesh, raising children? They used to raise the children who would prepare the ashes and the water for the Para Aduma. They would raise them in a completely serene, holy environment. There are no Tumas Shratzim in this book. The sets of halachas that are discussed are Natilas Yadayim, not Sukkah, Chanukah, or Kiddush Levana. The one that was not discussed by the Rebbe is Mezuzahs. How many times in this book do we find a tefillah that becomes a halacha? The answer is 2, one in the end of Para Aduma, which we described about Mashiach, and one in today's Rambam at the end of the Rambam, where the Rambam says the word Amen. And lastly, where do we find Eretz Chayfetz, the halacha that nailing a vessel to the ground creates a strong attachment? Here, when a Jew is firmly rooted in his source, he has Eretz Chayfetz, he is connected to Hashem Almighty. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you again, everybody. It was 120 years ago tonight where our Rebbetzins neshama came into this world, and may her schus, may the life of our Rebbetzin continue to guide us and give us chayas and strength as we venture forth into book number 11, into Sefer Nezikin. Hatzlacha Rabba. Thank you to all the Ma'arginim again, Rabbis Cantor, Lipsker, Darren, Zaklis, Lane, Bush, and all the staff of Chabad.org. Hatzlacha Rabba, and the winners will be announced shortly. We look forward to seeing you all with the conclusion of Sefer Nezikim. Good luck in the study. Hatzlacha, and thank you very much.